decided to create an email account. I bought a Google domain and used my buddy's last name. His last name was Malin. This guy, Alex Malin, and I created like this mail-in management company. And I was just sending out emails as this Alex Malin guy, not a real management company. Wow. I didn't have a website or anything. The script that I optioned with Story Warriors called Dinah. And it was a finalist in the animation of the 2022 ScreenCraft Animation Contest. But prior to that, I did the family genre ScreenCraft contest as well, and it was a finalist there. So I knew, it got, it was well received, at least in the whole family script format. So then I was like, it's a script that's kind of a hybrid animation. Like in our minds, we always thought it would be like a CGI, like a live animation or whatever. And so we decided, all right, let's just did well in the family genre, let's try to go for the animation one as well. And yeah, so we had success in both. We got a meeting out of the family one, and then the option out of the animation one. So the same script kind of placed, two different genres for ScreenCraft.
Awesome. So but y'all had representation before ScreenCraft, right? Like,
yeah, exactly.
Yeah, for a while. Like you've been at it for a while, and you've had options and stuff before ScreenCraft. So I kind of always like to get that context. So sometimes we have people that ScreenCraft was like literally their first kind of thing that helped them get in the industry, but then talking with someone like you've been at it for a while, so we can like go much further back, than ScreenCraft.
Totally. Yeah. So I have a manager and a writing partner, Ben, who's pretty busy. So I'll be representing the two of us here. Gotcha. So we've had a manager, Jon Hersh, at Housefire Management for about 5 or 6 years now. Around, I think 2017, 2018 is when we signed with him. And this was a script that he actually wanted us to do, kind of get in the whole family space. So we kind of used to write raunchy comedies, kind of those, classic early 2000s, Judd Apatow type comedies. But, that whole comedy genre is kind of dying, or, in a bad
Don't
state.
Say it, man. I hate that. Don't say it.
Yeah,
I saw on your cover file. I'm with you, dude. There's some of the best comedies ever came out of that time.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think it was definitely, up until maybe, 2012 or so, the big boom for comedy. And that's, where I kind of grew up on, I was in high school and college, in the late 2000s. So that's where were my formative years, at least in terms of, wanting to get into writing and loving movies and all that. So, so we decided to, maybe tone it down, do a family type movie. So we wrote this script, Dinah. It's about dinosaurs, like a family that the world where there's teacup dinosaurs that exist. They kind of replace dogs and cats as like the main domesticated animal. And these little 3-foot teacup dinosaurs are super popular. This family that's going through some hard times. The mother recently died, so they kind of lost that maternal figure. They convinced their dad to adopt a teacup dinosaur. And that teacup dinosaur grows to be a full-size, 100-foot tall brontosaurus. So it has like, kind of like that Clifford the Big Red Dog vibe to it.
Sure.
And yeah, so our manager, John, actually took it out to, took it out wide. So, there are different production companies that were interested. They sent it into the studios. And definitely was like the script that we got the farthest. Never ended up getting optioned or bought, but like all the major studios read it, and for budgetary reasons, $100 million original movie, just a tough sell. So in my head, I was like, all right, well, it didn't work doing it the whole, Clifford, the latest one, where it's kind of that, CGI, but mainly live film. So we decided to try to do animation, and I was like trying to talk to John about maybe getting into animation and trying to sell it that way, so it'd be a little cheaper. But he thought maybe the project was kind of dead in a sense. So that's when I uploaded it to the ScreenCraft Animation Contest, just to see all right, maybe there's something could happen with this. So it's kind of like we ran out of resources, I guess, on selling it through our manager. So I kind of took initiative, and I guess that's kind of the advice that I'll kind of preach throughout this interview is, if someone can't do something for you or you don't want to wait on someone, then, kind of take initiative and do it yourself.
Awesome.
Which again, going into sending it to a contest is, again, kind of leaving it up to other people to decide. But at least, the quick turnaround on when they read it, and they'll announce, quarterfinalists, semifinalists, finalists, all that. So, as we were progressing, it was, more and more excited. And then, yeah, we just found out that Story Warrior was looking for, I think specifically like an animal animated type movie. And so we gave them Dinah, and they read it, they loved it. And like the script even, didn't win the animated contest. I don't think it placed, in the top 2 or 3, whatever you guys have. But, it was a script that Story Warrior enjoyed and wanted to try to make. And they do some more like indie animated things, trying to do it on like a lower budget, obviously not your, Pixar or Imaginary or whatever the Minions one is. And that one, so, we just wanted to get it out there, and, ScreenCraft helped, introduce us. I never would have known about Story Warrior or Amy and the people over there. And so it was a great fit. They are now, looking to get financing for it, and they have a lookbook that we just checked out. So they have like all the little animated dinosaur characters. So it's really cool. It's definitely a step in the right direction, and definitely, without entering a contest, I never would have had that connection. Even though, I have a manager, and I think a lot of writers probably think, oh, once you have a manager, you're golden, but you still have to hustle and do the work yourself and open up as many avenues as possible.
Well, that's awesome. That's a great story. I mean, I love what you said, just even with a manager. And you're right, a lot of people starting out, that's kind of the North Star, the goal, but it's true, you got to still take initiative. And it's cool too that you like believed in your script. Like, even though your manager was like, I think it's kind of done, you were like, you still believe in your script and just wanted to still see what options are out there, and it worked out. So that's awesome. That's a really great story. And that's such good motivation for really anyone at any level. That's like the contest helped, and a lot of people just starting out who don't have representation, contests are kind of like one of the things that they can do, So yeah, anyway, that's a really good story. I would like to go back, if we can go back to, like, how did you even get into screenwriting in the first place? I always like to kind of really start with this and just get like, what was it that got you into screen? I mean, you can go as far back as you want. Like, what even got you into cinema? Cinema and film
totally.
Up in the first place, and maybe you can just go into that a little bit, and we can go from there.
Yeah. So I just enjoyed movies, ever since I was little, especially comedies. I think one of the first movies I saw in theaters was Dumb and Dumber, which I forget if it's PG-13 or R, but I was like 6 years old when it came out. So obviously, too young for that type of movie. But, definitely, like I said before, the 90s, early 2000s, so many great comedy movies. And I've always, been a pretty funny guy that, loved to make his friends laugh. And so I was always kind of in that whole comedy sphere. And I always kind of had movies in my head, but I never, wrote them down and try to actually get into screenwriting until my senior year of college. So I went to Cal Poly San Luis Obispo, which is like a state school in Central California. And that's where I met my writing partner, Ben. We were in the same fraternity together. So I was an accounting major. He was history. Neither had any film background, but we, both love movies, and we always said, oh, we should write a script together. So then we both graduated. This is around like 2012. We both moved to LA. I'm from this area. He's from Sacramento, but we both wound up in LA and just started writing together. And this was like right at the tail end of all those great comedies. And, we're like, all right, let's try to write, a great comedy. And at first we're just like, our goal was just to get a meeting one day and, not ever sell anything or option anything or get anything made. Just if we get a meeting out of it, we'll consider that a success. And, obviously we've done a lot more than that. So we've exceeded our goals, and now I guess need to get new goals. But yeah, in terms of like kind of learning the craft, we just read scripts, and I read a couple books, listened to some podcasts, read articles online, never took any class or never did any of that. And I think just one of those things that if you kind of understand the structure, 3-act structure and how movies work, and, you watch enough movies, you could kind of start to figure out like the process behind them. I guess maybe if you watch enough houses get built, you could probably build a house a little bit easier than someone who's never done that. So, we, especially with comedy, I think it's fun to like bounce jokes back and forth with each other. So our script at the first was just all about trying to get as many jokes in there as possible, and we didn't care about story and all that. And then we learned after getting 4s and 5s on the blacklist, and never advancing in a contest or anything, like, all right, let's really try to figure this out. So we were writing like scripts that were like 130 pages long and 40-page first acts, and things are just all these like learning curves that we had to go through. But like our second script, we optioned. We've written like 12, 13 features now, a couple pilots, been hired to write feature. So we went from nobody's trying to make it to now having connections at various production companies, and we've had probably 30, 40 different generals, and things that are close to maybe going to production. And so yeah, it's been a long journey. Was it 11 years now? We probably never thought that it would take 11 years to get to this point, but I think time flies when you're just cranking out scripts, and we're not just waiting for someone to say yes or no, and we're just being proactive on what we could do, which is writing.
Well, I would love to hear a little bit about like, what was your first big moment? What was the first meeting, or like, what was that one pivotal moment that took you to like it becoming a reality, like that first general meeting, or when you optioned that first screenplay or that second screenplay? Like, how did you get there? I would love to know. There's that big gap. That's like the mystery to people who are starting out. There's this insanely large wall and this big gap of like, okay, I'm sitting in a coffee shop writing alone. How do I get from this to like meeting someone or connecting or getting a meeting?
Yeah, totally.
Hear about that.
Yeah, and even though I'm from LA, I grew up in the Valley, and I never really had any connections to anyone in Hollywood, no family, friends, or family or anything. So you don't necessarily have to live here. So even though I'm living in LA right now, it wasn't to my advantage. But really the way that I was able to kind of get my foot in the door and get exposure is I decided to create an email account. I bought a Google domain and used my buddy's last name. His last name was Malin, this guy, Alex Malin. And I created like this Malin management company. And I was just sending out emails as this Alex Malin guy, not a real management company. Wow. I didn't have a website or anything.
That's awesome.
And I just found emails online, and through those Sony hacks that happened, there's, you had some emails that you could get. And that led to a couple options through that. I had to get a Google phone number so that I could pretend to be Alex when people called. And so I guess, it takes a lot of work if you want to go that route. I probably blasted out thousands of emails as this Alex guy, which is funny enough, like 5 years later, we're meeting with someone through our real manager, John, and he was asking about this Alex guy, and we told him that it was fake, and he was laughing about it. And they appreciate the hustle.
Yeah.
But I guess, long story short, it's about hustling and finding creative ways in. And so, if you need a manager to have some legitimacy, and it's hard time getting a manager, and it's kind of that chicken and egg thing, well, I was proactive and decided to do my part. And that actually led to a general with Broad Green, which is a production company that is now defunct. But John, our manager, was a development guy out there. He liked one of our scripts. We connected, and then he left Broad Green when they shut down and got into managing. When he did that, we said, "Oh, we want to leave our manager Alex for you." He took us on.
Wow.
So yeah.
That's amazing, honestly. Like that's so exciting to hear. And tell me, like, I know you don't have to go into deep detail, but like, what do you put in an email? Like, if someone, let's say, theoretically wants to go this route, like, what do you put in an email when you're sending these email outs? Are you doing just like kind of the standard queries, or are you putting scripts in there? Like, what is like a good email look like? And again, you don't have to say the whole thing, but like generally speaking, like how do you get people to even open emails? Because that's the thing too, is like these managers and agents, they get hundreds of emails a day. So like, what are you doing? Like subject line, is there any tips you have to like put together a good email to get people to actually open it in the first place?
Yeah, so I definitely don't. I never put the script in. I think that's like a no for legal reasons. But I just put like the script title, the genre, and then I just said, hey, one of my clients, Brandon and Ben, have this great script. I put the log line in, said if you're interested in reading it, let me know. And a lot of times, nobody will respond. So then I'll always do like a follow-up email like 2 weeks later. And I mean, it's a lot of like, work on your end that could be focused on writing. So, if people want to go that route, it's definitely time consuming. But it's no different than just querying. Like, I had a script that my manager didn't want to take out, so I queried people myself. I didn't use that whole Alex mailing thing. I just emailed through my own Gmail account. I had some contacts that I made, from all those generals I took, so I sent it to them. And then just new people I found, and it was just a normal query. I had basically the same success as I had as a manager. And that one eventually got optioned. That's a script I wrote by myself, and there's a director attached, some financing, and then hopefully it'll go into production later this year. So again, anytime, if I hear a no, I just find a different avenue to pivot to try to get that yes, and not settle for, oh, this can't be made, or I can't do anything with this, or, this project's dead.
So like just being creative, like you said earlier, like you got to be creative about how you can try to get your foot in the door. That's an amazing story though. I love that so much.
Yeah, and like Shia LaBeouf, there's a famous story of him. I think before even Stevens, he was calling people and pretending to be a agent, a talent agent, and you could find it somewhere. But he did something similar, and so that kind of gave me that creative idea to go ahead and do it. So I'm not the first person to do this. I'm sure I'm not going to be the last. So I think, you just kind of have to be creative in ways to get your script in front of people, but also has to be a script that's ready to show people, because, you only kind of have one chance with these type of things. So you want to be ready and have, your best script and with the best version possible.
Yeah. So I would like to get into a little bit about process for writing. I mean, this is something too, a lot of people in our community, there's a real difference. Like you can tell a big difference between people who are very productive and like put the work in and kind of obsess about process, and then people that struggle to get started, they struggle with writer's block. Maybe that's a good place to start, is like you said y'all have written a lot of screenplays. It sounds like y'all have a bunch of work under your belt. So do you ever struggle with writer's block? Like, or you could even dig into a little bit, how do you come up with ideas? Like, what is your process a little bit from like when an idea comes? What are those steps that you take to actually start getting this idea down on the page and manifested? Like, what does that process look like for you?
Yeah. So ideas could come in all different shapes, I guess. Like the dinosaur one, our manager just kept saying, write a movie about dinosaurs, and we thought he was kidding. And after 10 times of him saying, write a story about dinosaurs, we came up with that idea. And that was based on like, oh, there's so many great 90s animal movies, Beethoven and Dunstan checks in, and there's tons of them. And so we're like, all right, so if a family brings home a tiny dinosaur and it grows up to be a big dinosaur, basically a different version of Clifford. Or we have one of our favorite scripts is a group of dads that lose their children on Halloween trick-or-treating, and they have to get their kids before the moms find out. And that was an idea we literally had like right before going to a general meeting. We're like, oh, we should come up with like an idea to pitch them, because we don't have anything right now. It was like a funny idea, so that just came to us. Other times we're thinking about like, oh, what if we mash this movie with this movie, to different movies that we like, what does that look like? Sometimes I'll be reading about different movies that are coming out and kind of getting the like, oh, why does that movie work? Why is that selling? What's another take on that? Because a lot of these movies are the same thing, just rebranded and a little different. Another script we have is we love the hangover, the whole like mystery element of a comedy. So we're like, all right, what if, this woman gets pregnant at her 10-year reunion, gets hit in the head, blacks out, and doesn't know who the husband is. So it could be anyone from her high school reunion. What if her and her best friend go to, track down who the possible father could be. And so they, go to knocking on different doors of their old classmates. Kind of has that whole, who did it vibe with the hangover. So just trying to find, creative ideas. We have a Google Doc that has probably, I don't know, 80 different script ideas on it in various stages. And then once we find a script or an idea that we like, we'll send it to our manager. He'll, say, oh, that's something that could probably sell. We'll start brainstorming. We have like a Google Doc, which will have like 20 pages of different ideas of where the story could go. And so once we have that, we'll start outlining it, and we'll outline every single scene. So that could be like a 40-page outline. So we have basically a script written before we actually start writing. And then I guess as a writing team, it's a little different. We have to assign, different scenes to write so that, it's easy to manage. And then we use Writer Duet, which is, cloud-based, easy online writing tool where we could both be in it at the same time. And my writing partner lives in New York. So we never write together in person. It's always separate, rarely even on the phone together. We usually just, assign each other scenes, and we have a pretty distinct, cohesive voice. So we just write together, whenever we're available. And then we'll run through it, time in it, clean it up, and then, send it to our manager and just keep rewriting it. But I think that the key is definitely, for us at least, outlining it all initially, so we know if there's any problems, we could tackle that before we actually get to writing. So rarely now do we ever have like a page one rewrite. It's just pretty easy rewrites because we've done so much work before we get to writing.
What are your tips on outlining? What are the main things that you focus on when you're putting an outline together? And then I would love to hear about character, like especially with comedies. How do you start developing characters? But how do you outline? I guess that would be a good question. Like, what is that process? Every person I interview has such a different process and different things. So I always love to get the take of like, what do you focus on the most, or how do you get it going, and how long is that process, like from idea to finish? I would love to know that too.
Yeah. So I'd say from idea to outline is probably about 2 months, and then probably another 2 to 3 months to write it, and then another 1 or 2 months to rewrite. So like our latest spec that our manager is going to hopefully take out in the next month or two, I think it took about 9 months from when we first came up with the idea to pencil it down, finishing it. But in terms of outlining, I think, we kind of know, all right, how many scenes are going to be in the first act, second act, third act. So say it's, 10 scenes first act, 20 scenes second act, 10 scenes third act, give or take, around 40 scenes. What beats do we have to hit? We have to get to the inciting incident by, scene 4 or 5, and, get to the midpoint by scene 30 or whatever it is. We kind of know the structure, and then we kind of fill it in. And a lot of that time I do researching by just watching similar movies, seeing when they hit those beats, kind of what they do, and just making sure that, the outline should kind of fit the movie. So, if it's a thriller, what are the 2 or 3 twists that you're going to have, layer it in which order, wherever you want. For us with comedies, making sure that we have a lot of set pieces around like different types of gags or jokes that we want to do. And we don't have like a joke database or anything. I wish it was as easy as that. But to kind of transition to the characters thing, all our jokes come from our characters, having a lot of dynamic, different characters. So, like in Meet the Parents, the main character is so different than the, potential future in-laws and the brother and the sister and her boyfriend and all that. So, we come up with our main character, and then surround it with characters that have a lot of conflict, and, ways to make it so that the story stays fresh. And, with comedy, you don't really have too many villains, but, they're kind of battling whoever the antagonist is. I think it's important to definitely, at least we've never written a script without outlining. So for us, we don't really know what it's like, but I think it's easy to kind of give up on a script if you don't know where it's going. So
Yeah.
we know, exactly where the final scene's going to be, and things change, when you're doing that. But for the most part, we're able to kind of stick to that outline.
And then with outlines, do you have a specific format? Like I'm sure you probably read Save the Cat or any of those books. Is there kind of a specific format you stick to in terms of the beats that you're hitting? Because I know you said
we use
Catalyst.
we use Save the Cat for kind of the beats, but that I think there's maybe 10, 15 beats. So if you're trying to put together a 40 to 60 scene outline, you're going to need to hit more than just those beats. So we actually usually do kind of that Save the Cat thing first, and all right, what's our act one? Where are we ending it? What's our midpoint? Where are we ending act two? What's act three look like? All that. So we hit those Save the Cat beats, and then from that we take it into the outline.
Gotcha.
So yeah, we usually do like a little beat sheet, one pager that goes into an outline, which is usually could be 15, 20, 30, 40 pages, and then we do the script. And so now, like I said, I think at the intro, we used to write like 130, 140 page scripts. Now, with better outlining and, we know ourselves better, that comes into like 100, 110 pages. So kind of that sweet spot.
And what do you do character development? Like, do you do any type of backstory work or anything like that? Like when you're developing your characters, like how do you start to hear their voice in your mind?
Yeah, not too often. I think in terms of characters, our process isn't kind of as rigid as it is with the outline, where we do the same thing. So we'll sometimes think of actors or certain characters from other movies that kind of feed into that. We'll rarely do a backstory, but we kind of just in our head kind of know like, all right, this character is this type of person. If he's a pushover, if he's a strong-willed character, or he's we have a two-hander buddy cop where the husband is kind of more of the quiet character and the girl's more of the strong-willed, John Wick type. So
Gotcha.
trying to play on different stereotypes or what you think might happen. So characters, we definitely, I think also we're more plot based. Like when we come with ideas, it's more of like this world with teacup dinosaurs, not like, oh, where are these characters and how we fit it into a world. So we usually come up with like a concept before characters, and we build those characters into the concept. So character work is definitely, I think, something that we probably improve on in terms of like outlining that first, because I think it helps if you do have that kind of background with the characters. But for us, the focus has always kind of been on the plot and then putting characters into that plot.
Well, also from what I've heard and like looking at your stuff, as of now, are y'all only writing? Well, I have a couple of questions. One, do you only write with your partner, or do y'all both go off and do solo stuff too? Like, or is it mainly you write with your partner?
Yeah. So we write together, and then I also write some stuff on my own. I've written a handful of scripts on my own. Ben hasn't written anything by himself, so I guess
Tell me a little bit there. I would love to hear about like what is the difference for you? Because I think this is always helpful too with people starting out. Like sometimes finding a partner can be like the biggest difference to start helping you be more productive. Like some people having a partner might be their solution if they're struggling with writer's block. But what is like the difference for you in those two processes? And I'd love to hear just a little bit about like how do y'all collaborate on ideas? Like how do you bounce ideas back and forth? Do you ever get in little arguments and stuff? Like I just would love to hear a little bit about it.
Yeah. No, we I know some of my partners that have had to go to like a therapist to work on things. I'm not joking about that. So there is some, tension, which I understand if your partner is not just in screenwriting, but in a business or whatever, there's going to be tension. But Ben and I think helped that we were friends first, that we never clash, in our friendship, let alone writing.
Awesome.
And I think we just kind of trust each other that whatever idea we have is, whoever, is more matter of fact about it, they, care more about it, then, that's the right idea. But we're also so similar in terms of our humor and the stories we want to tell that there's never any battles or anything. We haven't, I don't even know the last time we got close to what would be considered a fight. But in terms of like deciding whether to write together or separate, for me, I always, tell Ben, any idea that I want to write on my own if he's not interested in doing that, or he, we also have day jobs, both of us. We work, 40-hour day jobs. So, juggling writing and a day job and family stuff, all that is tough. So, if there's certain busy times, I'll write something on my own. I would definitely say that writing on your own is definitely lonelier and not as fun as, writing with a partner and pitching jokes back and forth and, rewriting stuff. And so it definitely is, different animal all in of itself. You also have to write every single scene, whereas when we split scenes up, it's only half the screenplay.
Yeah.
But, I think at first, the first time I wrote by myself, it was like, all right, can I do this? And then, got optioned, and I was like, all right, I could do it by myself. I could do it with Ben. I could do it, with other writing partners or whatever. Like, I think for me, just, whatever it is, I know I'm a good writer, so I could adapt. If I ever need to be in a writer's room for, TV show or whatever. But yeah, I think it's definitely different writing by yourself and writing with a partner. But for me, it's always, I don't know, if the movie's working, then it's pretty easy.
Do you enjoy one of them more than the other? Like, do you like writing alone more? Do you like writing with your partner more?
Definitely writing with a partner more, just because I think with comedy, it's fun to bounce, jokes and ideas back and forth.
Yeah.
And it's not as lonely.
Yeah. So you mentioned something that now I have to ask you about this. You said, so y'all both have day jobs, which is kind of the thing right now, especially with the writer's strike coming. Like, there's a lot of kind of chaos right now of like what's going to be going on. But how do you stay productive? Like, how do you stay motivated? This is the biggest problem or issue or question that people have who are kind of just getting started and they haven't quite found their way. People struggle to stay motivated and struggle with like writer's block. Sounds like you're very productive, you and your partner, and especially having a day job and finding the time to write. Just what do you do? What's the trick? What is it going on up there that keeps you focused and motivated? Like, any tips that you have on process, like, would love to you can go into that however deep you want, because the mindset stuff, I know it can be cliche sometimes, but it's like, that's the biggest thing that people really ask about is like, I'm struggling. I don't feel confident. Like, I have writer's block. So anyway, I'd love to just.
Yeah. So my day job is like in the finance field. So I, work with numbers and Excel spreadsheets and, not creative at all. So I think it helps that my day job is totally different than what screenwriting is like. And I think for me, especially now that I have a family, I've had a daughter that was born last year, so she's like 15 months. So I definitely have less free time than I did, 4 or 5 years ago. But I think for me, it's really a lot of writing is kind of done in your head when you're, grocery shopping or, cooking dinner or whatever. So I might not have as much time now as I used to kind of focus. But once I do sit down, I, kind of plan so much in my head that I know what I need to do. And I think, it took us a year or two to write scripts, 10, 11 years ago when we were writing, and now it's gone down to 6 to 9 months to write a script. So we're just more efficient writers. We're, more used to it. We know what needs to be done. But I think that the key definitely is kind of writing in your head first and, coming up with ideas. And I go on a lot of runs. So, if I'm on a run, I kind of have alone time to kind of think about it. So, especially like right now, in the outlining stage, we're outlining our next spec, and a lot of it's just done like thinking and like, what could this movie be? And, you can either sit at your desk and kind of stare at a blank screen, or you could be, driving around or doing whatever and kind of having that same thought. So I think just being more efficient right now with my time.
That's good. So like, that kind of seems like a benefit that it's very opposite. You do numbers and statistics, and then you have this creative outlet. And is it like, when you write, does it bring you, like, do you like writing more than you like your job? I guess, I don't know if that's an obvious question or not, but like, does writing bring you a lot of fulfillment and like passion and enjoyment? Is that kind of like a creative outlet for you more than it is about like, I'm going to sell this and option this?
Yeah, totally. Yeah. No, I don't write for, financial reasons or anything. That's what my day job's for. And if one day I don't have to have a day job, great. If not, I'm happy to keep doing what I'm doing. But yeah, I just purely love writing. And I think that's also the reason, I'm able to, if I have an hour or two at night, I could, tackle a bunch of stuff and not just, I don't have writer's block. Is I just love writing and what I think about, 24/7. And to me, it's never, I'm never dreading it. I'm never, not excited or looking forward to it. Whether, there's aspects of my day job that I do enjoy, and then there's aspects that I dread and hate. So I think when you're passionate and you love something, it's easy to be, efficient at it and, stay up late or get up early or find time to write.
Yeah, I love that. I would like to get your thoughts on unfortunately, there's work being done that just started like 2 doors down from me, and I keep hearing this chain, like this saw or something. So we might have to cut this short. I just don't want them to like.
Okay, yeah. I probably have to go in a couple of minutes, anyways.
But I'd love to get a couple thoughts on one, like what are like your top 3 favorite movies? I always like to ask that question. So I need some movie recommendations for myself, but it sounds like we have similar tastes because like the movies from the 90s and early 2000s are some of my favorites. But yeah, I'd love to hear like what are your top 3 all-time favorite movies that you recommend anyone just getting started, especially in comedy, for them to go watch and like take some notes on it.
Totally. Yeah. So my all-time favorite movie is The Truman Show, which isn't like a pure comedy, but it definitely is a very high concept, great idea. And we named our dog Truman after The Truman Show, nice. Although most people think it was after the president. The Truman Show, definitely number one. I think it's, it's brilliant back then. I think it's still, is a great movie. Was it 25 something years later?
Now, that movie was so ahead of its time. It is
totally,
relevant right now. Social media, everything going on.
Yeah. That's even like there's that Jury Duty show that just came out and definitely has a, the Truman Show vibe to it. And then I would say, I think Meet the Parents definitely is one of the most influential movies for me. That's one I've rewatched dozens of times. And then I think the third one it's a smaller movie. It's called Death at a Funeral. There's a British version. I think Chris Rock, someone made a remake of it, like an American version of it. But the British one, Peter Dinklage is in it. That is, I don't love like British humor that much, but that movie for some reason just like is perfect. And that's probably more than The Truman Show or Meet the Parents is a movie I've seen more times than any other movie.
That's awesome.
I think it came out like in 2007 or something. Yeah, Death at a Funeral. It's just like a perfect, awkward family comedy that just, I don't know, it's great.
That's awesome. I'll put that on my watch list. And then I saw Truman Show like in your cover fly, and I was wondering, are you planning on branching away from comedy at some point and tackling like something more like Truman Show? That it's funny, like it's a funny movie, but it's definitely, it blends perfectly. Like it's a very high concept, like powerful movie, but you are laughing throughout the whole movie. But are you planning on branching off, you and your partner, doing dramas or doing any other genres or anything?
Yeah. We've written some non-pure comedy stuff. We've done some coming of age, sci-fi, nice. Action. Usually there's always a little bit of comedy in it, whether, whatever it is. But I love horror movies. I would love to eventually write a horror movie, but whenever my brain thinks of an idea, it just goes straight to comedy. So I can't, I have to rewire the way my brain works when I think of ideas. Because even like someone told me an idea that was a horror movie, and I thought, oh, that sounds kind of like a comedy to me. So,
horror, how do you feel about Jordan Peele? Are you a fan of Jordan Peele now?
Yeah, he's great. Yeah,
he did this amazing interview where he talked about that actually kind of specifically, and he was like, because he comes from comedy background, and he was like, for him, comedy and horror are like very similar. They're like teetering on the same line. And I'm like, totally, yeah. All the comedy experience you have, I'm sure you could write a freaking awesome horror movie if you somehow translate those elements over to horror. That could be awesome.
Yeah. It's honestly just the idea. Like I've thought, years about it, and just not even a single idea has ever come up. I wrote like a comedy horror hybrid that I just had some meetings on. It was all with horror companies, and they're all like, "Oh, what horror script do you have?" I had to be honest. I'm like, I just don't have any.
Gotcha.
So yeah, I think they definitely blend together. But I guess when you're asking like, writer's block, for me, I've had permanent writer's block and coming up with a horror idea. So until then, I'm going to stick to kind of the whole comedy sphere.
That's good. Last question. Mm-hmm. What final advice or like any words of wisdom? Like, what tip do you have for someone that is just getting started? They don't have representation. Maybe they have a few pretty good screenplays under their belt, but what's like your final piece of advice for people just getting started?
Yeah, I would just say look at like every avenue, whether it's the blacklist, ScreenCraft, any contest, and don't just wait for the contest announcements to be made and whether or not you advance. I would just keep writing. 10% of your job should maybe be trying to get your work out there, and the other 90% is always be writing. So for me, it's always don't rely on other people to give you that yes or no, or did you win, or do they want to read your script or whatever. I just kind of concentrate on writing, and if things happen, great. If not, just keep piling up those scripts, because keep practicing, and eventually you'll get there.
Love it. Thank you. Yeah, really appreciate that, and thank you for this interview. This was
awesome. Yeah, I appreciate
really
you
awesome
interviewing me. Take care. Yep, you too. Bye.